Alright, so Record of Ragnarok, Apocalypse of the Gods, chapter number 1. Here we go. So we start off seeing that Zeus is striking down his gavel, giving the announcement to all the other gods that Ragnarok is official. He hereby announced it. That was what we saw at the beginning of the main series, with him agreeing to Hilda's proposal and giving the humans the chance to fight the gods for their survival. The narrator says this is the other side of those spectacular myths. We then see a picture of Wukong, who I've talked about in the spoiler videos I have on the page. He is a warrior demigod from the Irish pantheon. We'll get far more into him as we continue. Zeus says, there goes the gerontocracy again, making a ruckus about damn near everything. Wukong says, what makes the lot of you gods think that you're so high and mighty anyhow? He doesn't say this to anybody, he says this to himself as he watches from the rafters of this new council, because this council is taking place hours after the initial one that announced Ragnarok. So I guess this explains why Hilda doesn't actually know about the roster. It's pretty weird because obviously we got that big reaction shot of Hilda when she saw the god roster in the main series, but the roster was revealed to all the gods in this council well before the tournament started. So this whole tournament that we see in the spin-off manga takes place before the events of Ragnarok. A little bit weird there. You're telling me she didn't hear it through the grapevine anywhere. I don't know if I'm buying that, because as we see, demigods are allowed here, as Wukong's in the crowd, and she was obviously invited to the first council, or it was fine that she was there. But in fairness, when you go back and look at the initial reaction, she says the final roster, the lineup's been finalized. So maybe they can retroactively kind of make this make sense and be like, she just really wasn't expecting it to be Zeus that took that final spot. Although I think she would have heard about that as well, since that tournament finished up before this. But who knows? Maybe we'll get an explanation for this. Hopefully we do, because otherwise it seems as if it's a plot hole. So Zeus says, ladies and gentle gods, there is but one reason I've gathered you all here yet again, to announce the names of those fighting for the gods in Ragnarok. You see the god crowd start cheering, and we get the picture of Ra, the sun god of the Egyptian pantheon, the supreme god of the Egyptian pantheon. He doesn't really want to be there. He says, by the heavens, I thought this was something important. Basically thinks Zeus is wasting his time. He says, damn that Zeus, calling us on the basest of matters. We see that he's got all these ladies around him. They're fanning him. He's got these servants, all this, and he looks like a true king. We then see Morgan, who has the epithet the strongest goddess. So strongest goddess looks to be not just confined to Ireland, where she comes from. She's the goddess of war in that pantheon, but it seems like she is the strongest goddess in all of the cosmos, which is interesting because we of course have not yet had a girl fighter. Morgan is the first in this series, so makes sense that she's the strongest one. She looks actually pretty awesome. She's got scars all over her body. She's buffed up. She says, putting on another grand old spectacle. I see. No need to spell it out. I think we already know who's going to be fighting. We then see Sun Wukong and his brothers watching, or lack thereof. One of his brothers with the mohawk says, you sure don't want to watch, big bro. They're about to announce the fighters. Wukong says, nah, I don't care, with a book over his eyes. He's very similar to Buddha. There's definitely going to be a backstory between him and Buddha. Obviously, people familiar with Wukong and Buddha's mythology know that they have strong ties in their lore, and maybe there's hints to Buddha kind of changing Wukong. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We then see a picture of some random gods, one with a dog head, and they say, well, of course I'll get picked. They're all kind of speculating on what this tournament roster is going to look like. And Zeus presents the lineup for Ragnarok at long last. And we see a list, but this list only has 12 participants. It says Buddha, Loki, Apollo, Poseidon, Susanoo, Hercules, Thor, Bishamonten, Anubis, Odin, Shiva, and Beelzebub. So the one that's omitted is Zeus himself. Now that's very interesting because of the premise of this tournament is for that 13th spot to get filled by the winner of this tournament that's going to be announced. Now with Zeus being left off that list, it tells us right off the bat, we know the spoiler. Zeus is obviously taking that spot, but he's not part of this tournament. So how are we going to get to Zeus getting that spot? We see some reaction shots of everybody in the crowd. Indra, some of the Hindu gods, another group that I'm not too familiar with, but one of them looks like he has a halo over his head. We see Ra with his servants, and some of them are saying, hey, I don't see my name there. Mine either. The crowd is in uproar. We then get a picture of Ahura Mazda, the supreme god of Zoroastrianism, an ancient Persian, an ancient Iranian religion. But yes, he's the supreme god of Zoroastrianism. He's got a half and half look, almost reminiscent of what they showed us for Beelzebub, Baal, and Zabul. One half of his face is darkened, the other half is light. And the dark side looks angry. The light side looks like it is very calm and at peace. He says, I believe there's to be a mistake, because I don't see my name on that list. He then gets visibly very angry with Zeus. Zeus says, no. We then see Ra, his veins start pulsating in his head. Morgan freaks out. Ahura Mazda screams out, Zeus, surely you don't mean that we're inferior to those gods on that list. Zeus starts laughing and says, yes, ladies and gentle gods, I can feel your bloodlust, but you're picking on the wrong god here. Morgan says, gobshite, you old boar. Depending on the next words that come out of your mouth, all of us might be damn near ready to cut loose. In an awesome panel, she looks great. She's got these boots, she's got high heels on her boots, man, and she's ready to stomp them on somebody's neck, bro. But as she starts approaching Zeus, this is super interesting. The power pole of Sun Wukong, obviously I'm referencing Goku, because Goku's based on Wukong. He had the power pole in the original series. The extending staff of Wukong appears right in front of Morgan's face in an instant. So he extended it, she looks back up at him and says, what? You looking for a fight, you little? And Wukong sits up, he starts shaking his head, he's very nonchalant, he says, yeesh, I can't get a wink of sleep with all your yapping. And that goes for the rest of you as well. Cool your heads and take a closer look at that list. Ragnarok's supposed to be 13v13. But what do you know, there's only 12 people up there. As I mentioned before, the omission is Zeus. We get his epithet as the great sage equal to heaven, aka Sun Wukong. I don't like this picture of his design, to be honest. I think this looks a little bit weird, but I do kind of like his design. I mean, it's very reminiscent of Buddha. It's something different, it's a different take, but it makes sense given this verse and their abnormal depictions. It's very creative, and when we get more details on Buddha and Wukong's relationship in this series, I think it'll make more sense. Zeus says, ho ho, I never thought I'd see the former problem child get the crowd to calm down. You certainly mellowed out, huh? So Jake Paul in the regular Ragnarok tournament? Nah. So Zeus is very aware of Wukong, which is pretty cool. Wukong says, as if you won't take a shit, you don't know the next thing about me. Now, what the hell is your big scheme here? Now, the reason I said that I think that there's hints to Buddha is because Zeus seems to remember a problem child in Wukong that was very different than the one that you see here. I do think that this probably had something to do with Buddha and him having a fight, and Buddha probably enlightening him and mellowing him out. That's what I would assume. I think Buddha probably beat him at some point. Maybe we'll get that, or maybe it wasn't even a fight and maybe Buddha just won him over with words. Zeus says, my scheme, why I'd never. This is a feast. What need have I for scheming? There's no need to get so worked up. I have another feast made especially for all of you. Let me ask you, do you really want to enter Ragnarok that badly? Ragnarok effectively is a form of entertainment, of jest, against helpless humans. If I'm being frank, who enters hardly matters. Our victory will be overwhelming. Obviously, this was well before Valuns were known. Zeus thought they were just going to run roughshod over them. 7-0, clean sweep. It says a cakewalk like that could hardly take away the edge and the agitation of all these millennia of waiting. No. Now this is super interesting because we get the reveal that there was a ban on God versus God fights. Apparently it was taboo. It's been in place since they created mankind 7 million years ago. And Zeus says, as supreme chairman of the Council of Valhalla, I am breaking that taboo and I declare once again we will have a battle among the gods. We then see Ra's reaction. He perks up at this point. Zeus continues and says, you who have names for yourselves, aren't you just dying to find out? God versus God. If you really slugged it out, who'd be the baddest of them all? We get a picture of Morgan, Wukong, Indra, and then a couple unnamed gods plus Ahura Mazda. So those guys seem like they're probably going to be in the tournament. We then see Cuckoo Lin listening on, and he's getting very, very excited as he hears the taboo's been lifted. What's going on here? He hears the discourse in the crowd, and he has a revelation in his mind, which grows into this wide grin on his face, and he starts cracking his knuckles. He's prepared to fight. He knows damn well this is opportunity. Zeus says, aren't you just dying to find out once again in all the heavens who is the strongest? So this is pretty cool. We ought to settle that question through plain old violence. So they've agitated all these gods again. Zeus says, whoever triumphs in this feast, I shall give the final spot at Ragnarok. Now, obviously, we all know the spoilers. Zeus is that final spot. But what I find very interesting is that since Zeus is saying, let's find out who the strongest is, and doesn't enter the tournament, what do you guys think about that? Do you guys think that he thinks some of these guys are stronger than him? I personally definitely don't think that's the case. I think that Zeus thinks that he is the strongest. He's got that strong, very powerful ego. And I think that this is actually going to be a ploy from Zeus to potentially gauge some of the power of some of these obscure gods. As we get further into it, this will be made more clear that these gods that are going to be part of this tournament are very uncontrollable, that they can't really be forced into a tournament without valid reasoning, and they're more so a problem to the heavens. So I think he wants to see how strong these guys really are, maybe whittle them down to one, and then maybe assert dominance in the end if he does end up beating that person for the position as the strongest. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, I reign atop all of the gods. I also find it very interesting that we don't see Odin at all during this whole chapter. He is mentioned at one point, but yeah, he's not there, so hopefully we do get to see him. There's a plethora of possibilities for how the end of this could go. I'll probably make some more theory videos in the near future. Zeus says, I hereby announce the holding of the apocalypse. Thus a war among the gods, of the gods, by the gods, and for the gods was declared. And Zeus goes in his buffed up form and slams the gavel down. We then see Hermes, Ares, and Zeus walking along as they normally do, and Hermes says, what a wonderful proposition, Lord Zeus. And it's just like you, should I say. Ares says, but Dad, are we really sure this is a good idea? Zeus says, of course, you saw the energy back in there. They're plenty content with this. I'm content too. At least with the 12 that are entering Ragnarok, says Ares. And we get a picture, a silhouette of Thor, Shiva, Poseidon. I couldn't think of anyone more fitting for the task of destroying humanity than them. But that's exactly why. Hermes cuts him off and says, yes, most of the gods that were not chosen for Ragnarok, no, that could not be chosen, are a danger even to us gods. The unstoppable, the untouchable, the unknown, those who we call the outer gods. So very interesting new concept here of the outer gods. In this silhouette, we see for sure Ahura Mazda, Morrigan, and some Wukong, but also those two others that we don't know who they are just yet. Now, I do find this interesting because this explanation also gives us a lot of explanation for some of the other gods that were omitted from the Record of Ragnarok tournament to begin with. A lot of people question why Hades wasn't on the initial roster of the tournament and why there's so many Greek gods on that tournament roster when they have every pantheon at their disposal. I think there's a couple explanations for that. For one, Zeus made it very clear this chapter that he didn't think it mattered who explicitly were chosen for the tournament because he thought it was just going to be a clean sweep anyway. So he probably wanted to give his pantheon a lot of showcase. And with somebody like Hades, perhaps maybe he was an outer god that we don't know, and it's very hard to control. And especially given that he's Zeus's older brother, Zeus obviously wasn't going to force him to do it. As they kind of alluded to anyway, he was stunned that Hades even wanted to be part of the tournament. It doesn't seem like he attends any of these meetings. So I think that that adds a lot of credence to that. And perhaps this will become a plot point later on in the main series that Zeus will maybe have some regret about who he chose for the tournament and who he did not. Hermes goes on to say, and through the breaking of this taboo, I'm sure we'll see many of them now clash. This apocalypse is truly an unpredictable tournament and may very well shape the fate of the heavens more than Ragnarok. And that is why I have much stake in and Hermes gets cut off. So this further goes along with the theories that Hermes has this overarching goal, this nefarious plan behind the scenes. Again, he gets cut off in the middle of a sentence about it. So further tying into Ragnarok, just going to fuel that fire. He gets cut off by Ra. He ends up saying, well, and we see Ra staring down Zeus, Hermes, and Ares. Zeus says, oh, and speak of the devil, what can I help you with? Ra. Ra looks pissed. He says, you have done more than just cross the line, Zeus, screams his name. We get narration that says Ra, the supreme god of ancient Egypt, one of its original gods and the god of the sun. The pyramids and obelisks, which symbolize Egypt today, are first and foremost a monument to the people's faith in Ra. He indeed ranks high enough among the gods that he was in attendance during the conference on mankind's creation itself. But having once defied the council and attempted to destroy mankind on his own, he also ranks as one of the unstoppables. So take note of the fact that Ra once challenged the entire council and attempted to destroy mankind, yet he still remains a god to this day, was not killed out of retribution, was not thrown into Tartarus. That kind of speaks volumes to how much of a threat this guy is, that nobody really wanted to press the issue with him. I guess we don't know all the details yet, but I think that this is for a reason. I think that this is pretty impressive for his portrayal. Zeus says, ho, don't get so worked up, Ra. I'm just as concerned about the lineup for Ragnarok as you are. Certainly the heavens are practically filled to the brim with strong gods like yourself, so Zeus even called him strong. But having us fight to the death to decide who will participate would be putting the cart before the horse. Indeed, it's what a certain someone is hoping for. And he was thinking of Hilda. So apparently this is weird though, because he's insinuating that Hilda is hoping that the gods, kill each other off and they start infighting over it. So how does she not have no intel on this? Come on, man. But Zeus says, but this is a feast after all. Fighting for one seat won't kill us. Otherwise, it'd be boring. So I don't know if this is actually going to be to the death or not, but it seems to insinuate that, like Zeus says, having us fight to the death. Guess we're going to have to wait and find out if it's going to be to the death or if there's like just a KO or something that happens. Zeus says, and that's why I lifted the taboo. The chance for us gods to have a good scrap doesn't just happen every day. You ought to enjoy it while it's here. Ra says, boring. Interesting. Enjoy. Since when were the heavens a playground for you and your lackeys? So disrespect to Ares and Hermes catching strays. Hermes actually looks very worried. He's sweating. This is actually the most worried I've ever seen Hermes. So this speaks volumes to Ra. Ares turns around and says, "So Ra, it seems that there's been a misunderstanding between us here. Why don't we just calm down and talk this?" And before he can finish his sentence, he is drenched in sweat. His eyesight starts getting blurry. He starts fading to the ground. He's under immense heat. Ra says, "Bumbling fool, who told you could come near me?" Ares thinks to himself, holy shit, what's going on here? Why is it so hot and arid? It's as if I've been cast into the desert in the blink of an eye. This is Ra, god of the sun. Any ordinary god cannot so much as touch him. We're actually getting supernatural abilities here. You can't even get close to Ra because of the heat around him. It's so arid like a desert. Ares collapses to the ground immediately. Ra says this is utter stupidity. So I'm very interested to see if this is going to be a fact in this fight. Like, is he gonna just show us his ability and then it's not gonna be affected in the fight? If so, I'm gonna be pissed, not gonna lie. Ra says this is utter stupidity. What point is there in holding any tournament? My total victory is the only way this will end. Who says, I see, you don't get it. To play, to enjoy oneself at any and all times is the privilege and essence of us gods. You are so easily bothered by so many things. Is it fun being a god with all that bogging you down? Hermes is deathly afraid at this point. He thinks to himself, "Oh Lord Zeus, I implore you not to stir him up so much." Ra then says, "Then allow me to give you something to think about." And he starts walking towards Zeus, aura on fire, and Zeus goes into his buffed up form. Ra says, "Right here and now, let's settle this," and the two of them face off. And we'll leave it at that for today. This chapter is extremely long, so this video, you can already tell it's pretty long. For me to cover the rest of it, we're going to do a part 2, so make sure you're subscribed for all that. Let's try to get to 150 likes on this video to get us to that next part, the conclusion, where I break down the rest of the chapter. But I'll catch you guys in that one. Peace.